Well, welcome to Men's Couch, Dr. Hostetler, the show about men's mental health and relationships. I'm happy to have you on. I've been excited for this, and I'm happy for you to be able to share your insights and that we can dive into this discussion on men and addiction.
I am super happy to be here. I could talk endlessly about this topic.
Yeah, so I like kind of like how we started off our conversation. We talked about just humanity in general, that humanity is complex. And I think that could be like a helpful framework when men are coming to terms with their own addiction or they're seeing like addiction in someone else. I think it's important to have that framework so that we can like touch into like the nuances of why someone gets to where they are.
Yeah. So I guess to get into that topic, should we jump back to our pre-show conversation about humanity?
Sure, yeah.
So the idea of being a human comes into this. And what I mean by that is if we introduce a topic in a way that people can connect to just authentically, right? And addiction is one of those things that can happen to anybody because
Yeah.
really plays on neurotransmitters like we talk about all the time, right? It plays on behaviors and learned habits and your culture and all kinds of things that go into it. And I think the more that we're able to introduce topics of any sort, so mental health, substance use, poverty, anything that is a human thing that we have to navigate, if we introduce it in a way or talk about it in a way that really connects to all of us on a deeper level, that fundamental level,
Hmm.
I think it's easier to, one, engage with as a person to be like, "Okay, wait, do I drink too much coffee?" Okay, or,
Yeah.
"Hey, do I how do I step out of smoking cigarettes?" Right? In a way versus, "You should quit doing this because it's bad for you." Right? Or,
Yeah.
"Only bad people use this." That kind of thinking.
Yeah, and I think we internalize those narratives growing up. Um, feel like either like from our parents or family, like, okay, don't do drugs, don't do this. And I think I get the notion behind that. I get that it comes from good intentions, but it's like, well, okay, well, are we how do we actually like approaching the topic of addiction? Because it seems like it's grounded in avoidance. It's like, just that's if you find out like, okay, your uncle is, doing weed or whatever, it's like, okay, your uncle's kinda weird, or it's like it's this narrative that we have with people that do struggle with addiction and just our own tendencies to fall into it. I feel like we look at addiction to the extreme, and then we don't see our own addiction or our own tendencies, and this kinda goes along with the humanity aspect to it, where you said, like, earlier that, okay, anyone is capable of falling into it. So I think having that level of humanity and humility, seeing it within ourselves, I think can lead to open discussion.
Absolutely. It is the difference between approaching somebody with, "Hey, you have a problem and you need to work on this," versus, "Hey, these are problems that humans have. Do you struggle with any of these?" And I know that's not much of a difference, but it is a difference when you really think about, "Hey, here's a list of things that humans can have issues with," right? Or overuse or misuse by design in some cases, right?
Mhm.
When we think about sugary food, think about how much sugar is placed in just normal everyday food, right?
We just don't think about that. We just, like, normalize or, like, glorify certain things, and it's just so normal, but I feel like to a degree, it can count as, like, like substances,
Mhm.
and that can, like it's like a stretch. I feel like that can be a stretch, but what I'm saying is that can still count as, like, an addiction if you're, like depending on, like, how you're using it. We don't see that with, like, whether like, things like coffee or caffeine. We don't see it that way, but it's just I don't know. So I think it's interesting how we compare.
Well, and I think that we do it on the level of like what is the most harmful. And that makes a lot of sense in the way of saying, hey, certain substances that you use, you have a much higher risk factor related to overdosing and having serious complications from this use, right? Whether it, permanent neurological stuff that's going to go on or permanent cardiovascular stuff, right? So we can look at some of those substances and be like, yeah, people probably shouldn't be using fentanyl without a prescription or without like deep bone issues or, immense amounts of pain, right?
Mhm.
But when it comes to some of these everyday things that get people too, right? Meaning like, hey, it's okay in our society and we're okay with this culturally, but it's not necessarily healthy for us. Cigarettes are probably on that cusp of us being like, okay, this is socially acceptable, but not as much as it was 20 years ago. Or
Yeah, that's I think I find that very interesting. I think it was either my parents or grandparents said that, like when they would go to restaurants, like back in the 80s or whatever, that people would smoke everywhere, and I just like, "Huh, that's interesting."
Eaton Park used to have a smokers like lounge in it.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that.
The other substances that fall into that, alcohol, and I think we're having more of a discussion around like, hey, alcohol might not actually be as healthy for you as it has been talked about in like the media, right? I actually think I heard an ad last night on a podcast that I was listening to that if you have been diagnosed or if you have consumed alcohol and you've been diagnosed with cancer, there may be a
Oh my
class
goodness.
lawsuit for you. So there's more discussions coming up, right? But to our point, what we were talking about is, hey, there are things that could be labeled under like addiction or misuse that we don't often talk about or see in that
Mhm.
frame. Caffeine is one of those, absolutely. And I think we can really highlight that with if we would replace coffee cups, as I'm looking at mine, like if we would replace coffee cups with bottles of beer, would we
And that's
how widely used it is?
I don't think it would be widely used.
Caffeine, you don't
Yeah, I don't think it would like caffeine would if it was like a beer bottle, it wouldn't be widely
no.
used. I think it's yeah, because like I guess, like coffee yeah, because it's like it's associated with a lot of things. Starbucks, you're gonna go Starbucks or like on campus we have Saxby's. So there's like different things that it's associated with, and it's just seen as just like the thing, the
Mhm.
norm.
It's the same as Celsius and
Yeah,
all the energy drinks too. They're even marketed to colleges, right?
yeah.
As because that idea of studying and having to drink caffeine to stay up late and study, like, it's all in that vein. But if so in what we're talking about, that idea of mental health and substance use in men, if we wanted to have a more open conversation about this, I think it starts with humanizing all of that and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
humans drink coffee. Why do they drink coffee?" Right? Is it a cultural thing? Is it a behavioral thing? Is it at this point an addiction? Right?
Mhm.
And if you're withdrawing from it, which it's very easy to have that happen with caffeine, you get headaches, you get like irritability, that kind of stuff, then it does run into that idea of like, hey, you are actually addicted to this substance, right? And like what it's doing in your body, which is just making you feel not tired. Okay. And then that's why you have a crash afterwards. But if we humanize all of that and say, hey, this is what this is, even behaviors that we normalize in our culture, we get a more open conversation about everything. Like, hey,
Yeah.
so alcohol, right? How did you get introduced to alcohol? How did you come about it versus saying you drink a lot and you need to stop?
Yeah, and that's not like even like that sentence, like you need to stop drinking or like please put the vape down. It's like it's I get why people say that and it means well, and I can't like so I can't be on the show and fully say I have handled addiction in like in the safest way. Like it's mostly like just not being like fully educated, but I think that sentence of okay, just put it down I think we kinda shows, like, the disconnect between what we understand, as people that are, like, observing people in addiction versus, like, the actual reality and of what's going on.
Absolutely. And it's that style of, hey, just stop doing this. If we change this around, and I think that this is popular enough analogy that it will make sense. But with folks who have depression or folks who have anxiety, being
Mhm.
told, like, "Well, just stop worrying about it." And it's like, "Oh my god,
Just stop being
I can't
depressed.
believe I didn't think of that." But in that same vein, if we can look at it in that same lens of, "Hey, this is a human ailment." I don't know if ailment's a good word there, but, like, this is a human affliction that someone is experiencing, and how do I help them out of this, right? Or how can maybe not even help them out of it as much as, like, how can I be with them in whatever capacity that I am connection wise, right? Like, am I their mom? Am I their brother or sister, whatever, right? How can I support them in the role that I'm in to healthier habits, healthier behaviors?
Yeah, and I think, with men, I have not researched this actually. I don't know, like, the statistic of substance use with men. I don't know if you know. I don't know if you
It is
research.
relatively well, it depends on the substance.
Mhm,
There's varying degrees depending on gender. But I think with men, the conversation around substance use has to connect to mental health in a lot of
mhm.
ways and going, hey, dual diagnosis matters, right? Having like substance use along with a mental health diagnosis, right? But I think deeper than that, we're looking at depression and anxiety in folks that are not being treated, but rather maybe self medicated with
I
things
see.
like substances.
So, it's just, like, the underlying anxiety and depression that because maybe, like, in certain social spheres, men aren't encouraged to seek treatment, like, for depression, so the default might be self-medication because it's seen as, like, the easy way out.
Probably not even just the easy way out, it might be the only way, right?
Yeah.
And that so, in reality, if we back up and go, "Okay, let's talk about depression in men and, like, what it actually looks like," and we could even say, let's look at anxiety in men and what it actually looks like, because I think that if we went over to the calf and asked people like, "Hey, okay, what does depression look like?" I think people would be able to ballpark like sadness. I think that they would be like, "Oh, you're really tired. You're just not yourself." That kind of stuff. But do you think that they would identify things like anger or irritability or like lack of sleep, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think no, I don't think they see that. Another thing I see with depression and anxiety is or for men, avoidance. Whether it's avoiding situations that trigger the anxiety or avoiding certain tasks or responsibilities. So I see that. Uh,
Mhm.
and I think once like the avoidance cycle begins, then I think because it starts with like avoidance and then it might turn to like isolation and then like the substances become more attractive to be used.
To fill that gap, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, when I think of and maybe we'll talk about college students for a second, right? When I think of someone who might be struggling with depression in college, I look at, okay, how engaged are they with their activities that they have to do? Are they
Hmm.
behind on work? Do they have some of that pressure that's coming in? Do they get along with their roommates? Who are they spending time with? Do they eat meals with people? Like, you start looking at, "Hey, are you connected?" You can be sad and connected, I'm fine with that, but are you sad and disconnected? And that starts to get
Yeah.
into some of not that I'm advocating for people to be sad but have friends, like, that's fine yes, thing. It's absolutely a good thing. But that isolation piece I think is so important. And I don't know what that is. And maybe that could be a fun question for us to kind of look at, which is, hey, is the tendency to kind of withdraw and pull back in a reflection of not wanting to be perceived as weak because you're feeling down, right? And you're not feeling your best, or you're neglecting things like showering and shaving and brushing your teeth, right? Those are real common things. Or is it more of like people can't see me like that? I don't know. What do you think?
For me, from what I've seen, it's just a simple idea of self-sufficiency and this idea of I'm going to take care of myself and this idea that I don't need anyone. And I don't think saying that that's like totally bad. I think we all need to have like a level of autonomy, but I think once it comes into, well, then no one can help me or no one is like can be in my sphere, then I think that that's when it can be like detrimental to you in the relational and mental health wise. I think it's the, the ideology that, I would say I don't wanna generalize here, but I guess, like, in the West, this ideology that we are, like, self-sufficient and we don't need people to be like, "Hey, I wanna, like, knock on your door," and be like, "Are you like, how are you like, that idea, I think it's scary to a lot of men, and what I've seen is scary to have that. It's also, like, kind of they don't know what to do with that level of support, or they haven't necessarily received that before, so it's, like, kind of hard to receive it now. Another thing but this is kinda changing a little bit with Gen Z, a little bit, a little bit, but I think this the ideology still carry. That's just, like, my perspective and opinions.
No, I really appreciate that because I think it adds to insight that I want to have on this topic, right?
Mhm.
And that self-sufficiency, right? If we think about that, it's connected to some deeper cultural stuff for us, right? This idea that when you turn 18, all of a sudden you're an adult and you can make real life decisions is crazy. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much growth that has to happen, and I'm not even saying that as, like, you young kids and you don't know what you're like, absolutely not. Life the layers that you understand start to become more clear the older you get, right?
Mhm.
And it's just because you get that experience of like, "Well, that didn't work out for me," or, "That did work out, and why did it work out?" That kinda stuff comes into play. At 18, to be like, "Oh, I should have this all figured out," that is not a that cannot be a real goal or cannot be even based in reality.
Yeah, I think that pressure to be able to have a level of, um, like, self-sufficiency at such, like, a young age, and you haven't, like, experienced the world or anything, I think that's what trips a lot of people up to kind of go inward and try to figure everything, like, out themselves, find their their true inner being, which is good. I think it's good. Discovering your identity is really it's healthy. I just think that we kind of miss the aspect of having people around us to be on that journey. And I think that's where we can kind of when it ends up in substance use, I think there's like a pattern of I'm going to handle everything by myself. So like even like when things come up with like depression or anxiety or just stress, I think it's always like the inward notion of I'm gonna handle it all and
Mhm.
try to keep all like the legs together for the table. So I think it's that. And I think once it ends up in substance use, then I think it's can be seen as you're more, I guess, what's the word? I guess maybe inclined to go that route if you're not balancing the self-sufficiency with having relationships of people that are in your life and that do want to care for you.
That idea of having people in your life that do wanna care for you is so important because as we're talking, I'm thinking about how people can want to be able to do everything on their own and survive well. And at the same time, some of their support systems or friends can be invalidating throughout all of that. So, if we go to college students for a second and, all right, you're gonna hear, "Well, this isn't the real world, and, you're gonna have to get up at 8 every day," like, all of that kind of stuff that goes in there. I think that people forget that we're all dealing with our own level of frustration and, like, what's gonna put us over the edge, and if you told me that every day you have to get up at 6:30 in the morning and rock and roll all day long, I'm gonna complain about that every
I don't
second.
miss that in high school, honestly. I don't
No.
miss that.
But I think we're very invalidating to people who are saying, "Hey, I'm struggling with this. I don't like this," right? And I'm gonna use getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning as an example, or 6:30 in the morning, let's say. Like, that can be very, very tough for night owls to do. That can be very tough for people who don't sleep very well or have anxiety to get up that early and function all day long. And so instead of looking at that and going, everybody has to get up early, struggle through it, maybe be like, okay, could your life look different? Can you not take an 8 o'clock class? Can you not
Yeah.
can we move it around a little bit? Having empathy, I think.
I also feel like people, men in particular, in my experience, feel like they have to suffer because it proves that on some level of their masculinity. I think they feel like, okay, if I'm suffering or if I'm like forcing myself to do things that I don't really need to do, then that proves like, oh, I'm a strong adult, I'm a strong person. And I think again, I think wanting to challenge yourself is good, but I think putting yourself in situations that are kind of leading to suffering, like unnecessarily, I think that's when it gets to the point where we're not taking care of ourselves and we're not understanding our limitations. So once that like overwhelm builds up of taking on too many things, I think that's when it comes to the point where of using substances because we're like so already like dysregulated and overwhelmed by everything.
Absolutely. And it is more socially acceptable in a lot of ways for men specifically to not process and not talk about what's going on with them, right? And to use things like alcohol. If you think about the
Yeah.
culture around for the boys, right?
Wait, say
Think
that again.
about,
I'm sorry.
the culture around Saturdays for the boys?
No, I don't know.
Okay, so that it's basically this idea that like Saturday is for guys to get together and drink or hang out in the garage and drink or go golfing and drink.
Oh,
That
okay.
right?
I was like, that sounds like a show.
It probably could be, right? Live clips from like the golf course or something. That type of tendency to get together and party, right? Get together and
Mhm.
have some drinks, get together over a football game or a fantasy league or something to that effect, right? That is all real good community building. And we don't want to take that away from folks, right? But there is probably emotional learning, let's just say like emotional intelligence that could be introduced in some of those spaces where
Mhm.
not only are you hanging out with somebody because you love football, you went down to the draft or something, right? But you're also hanging out with that person because he knows like what you're worried about right now or like how things are going on in your relationship. Though that is like real friendship, being able to talk about the stuff that's actually going on with you. And I think sometimes people are like, oh no, I don't want to burden somebody with what I have going on. You hang out with them all the time. You can open up a little bit more. You can share
Yeah.
just a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah. I have two secrets. One, I didn't know what the NFL draft was until like this week. I didn't even know what I'm not like a football. I'm far from football. I was in marching band. I didn't really watch a football game, so that's like a
You weren't
secret.
there for
Another
that.
Yeah, I was there. But so another secret is I have a lot of friendships that do lean more of, oh, we're always like it's really of high emotional intelligence, really. Sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming. I don't know like how common this is right now with Gen Z guys, but a lot of my friendships do surround um just being open with each other. Like last night, I had like a good conversation with my friend about like just like how things have been the past few weeks and just how he's been handling the overwhelm of that. And that's was beneficial for both of us because we were both able to talk about different things. So I don't have a lot of friendships where like it's like the Saturdays with the boys. I don't think I've actually ever experienced that. So I don't know if I'm like a rare case. I don't know, but I experience more of like, we're going to hang out, but we're also going to talk. And I think it's something that I'm very thankful for, but I don't know like how common that is because I haven't like been around other circles. So I don't know.
Do you think you facilitate that?
I do.
Yeah.
Part of it is I do. Part of it is because like, I think it's because, like, when I started out and we can do another podcast on friendship. We don't have to do that, get into that. I think you know me, like, and if you've seen me in class, I'm like a friendship person, like very friendship oriented. Oh, I think that is part of it, but also it's having like other men that value the emotional intelligence part of it, which involves like just being aware of like how you come across and being aware of like how your actions impact people. And that's a good like okay, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole or friendship. if I do, it will be here for like 2 hours. But what I will say is
Part
that
B.
that can be a sort of protective factor, maybe for some men to if they have that secure relationship with other men, that secure community, that can be a protective factor. Again, I'm not sure how common that is in my generation right now because there's like mixed opinions. There's like, okay, Gen Z men are becoming more emotionally intelligent with like the bromances or whatever.
Mhm.
I don't like that word, but there, and this also like there's like a loneliness piece with post COVID. So there's like, I feel like there's different narratives, but I don't know. My experiences.
Well, I suspect it's because it's different populations and different cultures, right? And it's
Yeah,
what
that is.
you. On one end, I think we have this narrative that runs that like empathy is not good for us, right? And on
It's
that's
a narrative.
really? No, no, it is. I'm so serious.
Oh my gosh.
There's a narrative of empathy, right? So it's this idea that you can have too much empathy for other folks, right? And that's some of the narrative that is behind not wanting women to vote because women have too much empathy for others and therefore would vote maybe not as what would be the pro? Not as pro, just different political stuff, okay? So we'll just
Yeah. So it
leave it
wouldn't
at
be
that.
like, so are you saying like the perception or assumption with women is that their like empathy or maybe like their emotions are running their actions? Is that what you're saying? Or am I hearing that
Essentially,
right?
right?
Okay. Okay.
It blinds them from the reality of like what needs to be done. Right.
Yeah.
And if you think about this, empathy is the thing that makes us so human. And the same thing that makes you a friend magnet, which I like to lovingly refer to people who are really friendly. And we're golden retriever humans. Okay. And golden retrievers are like the best dog at the dog park. They're always being like, I want to play with everybody. But so empathy is kind of what makes us be able to connect to one another. And as it applies to what we've been kind of talking about all along, is this idea that if I can have empathy for myself and go, okay, I'm a human that uses caffeine to get through the day, right? And I go, okay, yeah, no, I recognize I'm a human and I can process that. I can hold space for why I use caffeine, why I have a relationship with it, right? Can I then extend that to somebody else and go, okay, well, this person that I see on the street maybe looks disheveled and I can maybe tell that they're struggling with a substance of some sort. Maybe they have a bottle in their hand, right? Can I empathize with them and go, okay, this is a human that is struggling with something at the moment, right?
Mhm.
And how much of my own humanity can I offer to that person?
You know what I just thought of? It's like kind of when it comes to depression. I read this book a while back called Perfectly Hidden Depression. And then like because I feel like for a lot of especially like Americans, because we're very um we can be like image oriented to a degree that we're like trying to look like the best, like, oh, I'm happy, like, But and then there's like people, and then there's like the depressed person that like can't get can't get out of bed. I feel like obviously there's a two different experiences, but the root may be the same. And I think the grace and compassion comes from okay, your experience with depression is might be different than mine, but that doesn't mean it's like less valid. Or your
Mhm.
experience with addiction is different than mine, but that doesn't mean it's like more or less valid. Like if we can have this, I don't know what word I wanted to use. If we can have this common ground of humanity that we are all like we're all kind of whether it be like with addiction. I might be addicted to caffeine or gaming or what have you. It still can be an addiction. And if I see someone that's like really struggling, like really like bottles everywhere in the room, just vapes and stuff in the room, can I still see that as this is we don't wanna catastrophize it to make it seem like this is, like, so bad and so impossible to overcome and not look at what like, ourselves and see, like, "Wait a second. Am I having grace and compassion for my own stuff that I'm dealing wrestling with, and how can I, like, balance that out with other people?"
Mhm. And I think that that comes back as it relates to men specifically. Are they able to have enough compassion for themselves and whatever they're going through to recognize their own humanity enough to connect to someone else and say, "Hey, I'm struggling with this." Or yeah.
I don't know if it registers. I don't know. I don't know. I honestly don't know. From my experience, I think a lot of men is a huge, like, inner critic that we tend to have, because if we're not, like, living up to our ideal self. I just did a podcast on the ideal versus real self. Our, like, ideal self, we're
Mhm,
not living up to that, so we can tend that, like, the inner critic becomes bigger in a sense.
mhm,
Between, like, the disconnect between our real and ideal self, and we just listen, there's nothing wrong with having, like, goals, or there's nothing wrong with having that sense of will. If you don't know if you don't know the difference between, like, your ideal self and your real self, then you can get to a point where your inner critic becomes so big that you're like, "Okay, I'm a failure," or, like, you identify as, like, your mistake. There also comes with, like, identity as well, is
mhm,
are we, identifying ourselves with the substance or addiction? I tend to see that
mhm,
in some cases. I tend to see that people label themselves as, "Well, I'm just like a smoker, or I'm just a drinker." I tend to see that in some cases, which I think men also struggle with labeling themselves with, like, behaviors that they're not very proud of. It's like the shame piece of it. So shame is a huge thing.
shame is a huge yes. You know, shame and guilt are they're not super late emotions, but they're later emotions that we learn as babies. And it's much later on than what sadness and happiness come to us because we can read that off of our caregivers at a young age. And psychodynamic goes into that hot and heavy. But one of the
Okay, I think we need a podcast on psychodynamic
talk
because
about that endlessly. But one of the really cool things about shame and guilt, but we'll talk about shame specifically. We try at times to utilize that as a treatment skill, right? Or not even a treatment skill, a treatment. Think about this idea of telling somebody, like, well, you did something really, really bad. We'll think about the criminal justice system for a second. Like, you did something really you're being punished for that bad behavior. And then on top of that, I'm going to remind you of all the bad things that you did over and over
Mhm.
again, right? That is a shame style of just navigating with somebody, right? Where you're just like, hey, that you did something shameful and I have to remind you of it. With that, though, if you've ever felt shame, right? Or like you felt real bad about doing something, like say that you went to skip class and on the way to skipping class you passed your professor, right? Like the shame you must feel, right? Meanwhile the professor doesn't even notice,
He's like, "Huh." It's
but
physical too.
hell of a thing. Yeah.
I think that's what people like. I think that's why men that, like, have a tendency to struggle with, like, anxiety, because there's, like, the shame piece of it. Once, like, the anxiety trigger might be, "Oh my gosh, I see someone that I've broken up with, or I see my professor that I'm, like, skipping class. I see someone." It's like that, it kind of you feel it physically. So if you're not necessarily comfortable working with your emotional state in the present, then you're gonna be like, okay, for me, like, how I was, even though I'm, like, highly, highly sensitive, for a large part of my life, I was trying to disconnect and avoid my emotions like the plague, like, for a large part of my life. So, when you're, like, in that state of being so disconnected, or have a habit of disconnecting, you, for, for, like, certain men, you, like, are just gonna avoid whatever trigger it is, because you're like, "I'm not dealing with the emotions that come up with it. I don't wanna experience this, or I
Mhm.
don't know how to experience this, like, and feel safe, like, within myself." I can go into, like, body awareness, but I'm not gonna go into that today. So it's like I don't feel, like, safe in myself, so I don't know how to handle this. And then, like, I joke, like, this is, like, a joke. I joke with my therapist that, like, it's like a joke. I'm not really, like, I'm just gonna avoid everything and just,
Yeah.
like, because it's like it's to a degree, like, for if you're operating like, on that, like, that idea that avoid now, okay, in certain cases, I think avoidance if you're overwhelmed with something, I think taking a step back from situations is can be healthy, but if you're, like, avoiding your own emotions, then it's easy to see that substance use can be, like, sort of a, well, I guess I'll say Band-Aid over the avoidance of things. So I think when it goes to like, "Oh, I see my professor and I wanna, like, run the other way," that kinda can go along with it. We don't definitely once the shame comes up, I think there's a shame of, "Oh, I see my professor," but there's also the shame of, like, running away
Mhm.
because men don't wanna be seen as, incapable of dealing with things, so, like, that running away piece can definitely I went on a tangent, I didn't mean to go on, but
No,
that was my
no, I think that was very helpful, and it's interesting to think about this because what we're talking about today, right? So, men and addiction, but much of what we talked about is the mental health aspect of it, right? And how, like, shame comes into this, and I think that is such a maybe that's an easier segue into treatment too, is to
Mhm.
talk about the idea that, okay, we have to mention the substance use, but maybe we'll put that on the back burner. Hey, are you finding yourself avoiding things? Are you finding yourself
Yeah.
maybe feeling a little bit like sleeping too much or maybe feeling
Mhm.
a little bit more on edge? Those kind of things can lead to using substances as a band-aid. But I think that to really capture the picture, we need to go a little bit further than that and talk about behaviors in general that fall into those avoidant they're like comforts in the void that you're in, right? And porn falls into that, video game use falls into that, gambling can fall into that, checking social media constantly can fall into that. I mean, I'm sure I'm missing pieces that go,
Yeah,
you know.
that part, the piece of social media, I think is maybe a huge part of my generation. Not like I don't not like generalizing, but that could the default to constantly check and like see like, okay, I get a like or like they liked my post. Like recently I've had to be aware of this now that like men's couch is growing.
Mhm,
So like just being aware of okay, like what are our like motivations for checking social media or what are like what's going on? And I think in like in any situation asking the well what's going on? Like I like if my friends tell me something, I'm like, hey, what's going on? I always like say that, like, hey, what's because there's I feel like there's like we said, there is like that behavior, the surface behavior of I'm going to like, check social media or fall into like a gaming addiction. I think it's good to ask like, okay, well, what's going on? Like, what's up? So that way it doesn't define that person to a specific moment in time or like what they're going through or like, cause we, the way I like to see life in like seasons. I don't know if I like said that in class. I don't know, but like I like to see life as seasons. Like, sometimes you have like a season of um where things are kind of running smoothly or things are okay. And then sometimes you have seasons where like it's just one thing after the other. And I think it's more mindful to ask someone like, "Okay, well, what's happening?"
mhm.
Yeah, and like in a curious sense, not like in an invasive like, "Tell me everything of what," like like be
Was wrong with
curious.
yeah, not
Yeah.
not to that extent. No, I think understanding that people have a lot more going on than what we're privy to is a really good assumption to have in life. With that, I also think that I don't know, this probably goes completely left field on this, but I think we have to be mindful of when we want to be helpful to somebody, recognizing that sometimes the helpfulness is just being the healthy friend to somebody, right? And like the friend that doesn't do the activity with them. So if it's drinking, right, and you know that your friend struggles a little bit with drinking, not being the friend that drinks with them, right?
Yeah.
Or, that kind of stuff, right? So I think that can be very helpful. But in that same vein, understanding that you can be frustrated with somebody about their behaviors and their choices that they're making and still be helpful because frustration and telling somebody, hey, here is what I'm experiencing with you. So we'll talk about smokers for a second. If you are friends with someone who smokes every day, right? And they're able to get their work done and they're able to go, they're fine, right? Probably not the healthiest, but also it's one of those things where you're not noticing or they're not falling behind in their life, right? In their life choices. They're maintaining healthy relationships, all that kind of stuff.
Would
And
you say
those,
that's, like, high functioning?
yeah, like
Okay, okay.
yes. Yeah,
Or
in that
yeah.
vein, right? So, if we might go, "Hey, I noticed that you do this. Do you feel like it pulls you back in life at all?" Right? Or you can start conversations like that. But where I think that that goes on to like, falls on just maybe not the best grounds are people will get very defensive in those moments, right? Because 'Cause they're like, "Well,
Yeah.
everything's fine. I don't have anything." But those conversations are just as important as the conversations with friends who you know are struggling a lot more. And you could gently just be like, "Hey, maybe we'll go to the gym and go hang out on Friday night instead of going to XYZ," right? And I
Mhm.
think that's how we can gently just by including into healthier activities.
What I've noticed, in witnessing, like, friends that do wrestle, especially, like, with men, is just simply, like, what I've in my experience, what I've seen is them withdrawing from, like, community and just kind of,
Mhm.
like, going off the face of the earth. Our tendency, like, our first tendency is to be like, "Oh, they don't care about me," or they don't it's, like, personalized, like, their actions, like, "They don't care about me, they don't wanna be my friend," or whatever. Then it's it's like you have to sort of, like, step over that hurdle and sometimes be the one reaching out. It's like, "Hey, let's hang out," or "Let's" I noticed you haven't been hanging with us, hanging with the group in like a few weeks. Let's, do something. And it's like, I feel like we don't know how much that could be helpful to that person to not experience the shame of being like pushed further. Okay, anger is normal. I want to say like that's okay. But in my experience, what's been most helpful is not like because I've done this in the past. Is not saying like why aren't you like hang out with us. Like, what happened? You kinda, like, ghosted us for, like, 2
You
weeks.
take it personal.
Yeah, we take it personal, and then that kind of, like, make that kind of reinforces the shame that they already feel,
Mhm.
and it makes them wanna, you know, just say, "Okay, I'm just gonna, like, give up." But it can be more, like, repairing if we are, at least taking this step to say, um, "Hey, I see you haven't been around for a while. Why don't we go see a movie or something?"
You know, the tendency to take things personal here too, I think matters a lot on both ends, right? So if we think about it in the idea of taking personal someone's behaviors or someone's substance use, right? So say a young lady is dating a young man and the young man drinks every weekend and she takes it personal that he chooses to drink versus spend time with her. That may be a very real feeling, right? And maybe he is doing that, right? Like he's skipping out on dates or whatever the case may be. A Saturday with the boys, perhaps, right? And she expresses to him multiple times, like, hey, I can't believe you don't love me enough to spend time with me, right? And they
Mhm,
eventually break up or have more conflict that comes in. In those moments, it's really easy to go, okay, well, I'm going to take it personal that he's doing this. And it does feel personal, but it isn't about you necessarily, right? And I think that that feels very invalidating to the folks, to like the girl in this story, right?
I have so much to say about this, but go ahead.
Well, no, and I think it's like an important conversation around, hey, other people's behaviors are not necessarily personal to you, even if they feel like if someone hits you, sure, that's personal to you. But if someone's doing something self-destructive to themselves, it's very hard for us not to be like, "Oh, why would you do this to me? Why would you skip out on Thanksgiving dinner? Why would you do, whatever it is," right?
Mhm,
Whereas the reality of it is, it's so much more to do with them, and we might be impacted by it, but it's a lot more of if I can take a step back and look at this situation and go, "Okay, he's drinking a lot." And that has a lot to do with me, but nothing to do with me at the same time. How do I navigate this dynamic with this person? How can I be helpful here?
yeah, and it goes into, like of it's it's just coffee. But it's yeah, you can't and I've learned this, like, through, like, a lot of, like, experience, you cannot like, you truly do not know what people are dealing with, and when you do, because 'cause I've had conversations with people of, like, wondering, like, where have they been, or, like, what why have they been, like, declining, like, invites, and then it's like, "Oh my gosh, I've been, like, sick from, my addiction," and it's like, it's really you truly don't know, and I think if we deal with, like, the hurt and the impact of, their actions because it does, like, it does affect the people around them.
Absolutely.
If we, kind of deal with the impact in a healthy way instead of, trying to seek an answer out of, like, why are you, like, declining my invites? Why are you going back to the substance? If we're handling the impact, whether it's, like, in therapy or just taking more like an objective perspective, then we're able to I think compassion builds for both you and the other person of
Mhm.
this is what's happening right now. This person wasn't like this a month ago. So I'm not gonna like label them as something. I'm not going to see the person as the addiction because they are capable of like different things. They haven't always been this way. So you definitely have to like, you have to like step out of the situation, like step out to like see what's going on to have compassion for yourself and the other person. And also if you want to be a safe person to them, you have to like take that objective lens. It's not easy, especially like if you're dealing with like, if it's not easy to be like, okay, well, they're not like I shouldn't take this person. Like it's not easy, but
Mm.
what I would like say to myself and other people is to like I don't know how to say this. Is to like stop yourself whenever like feeling angry about the situation or surround yourself with other like secure relationships that are able to give you an outside perspective of what's going on in the
Mhm.
situation because we can become so like ingrained in it that we're not like able to see, okay, this is just two humans. We're trying to have like a good relationship, or we're trying to have like, I'm trying to help this person,
Mhm.
and we're not able to see it that we're able to see like, oh my gosh, this person hurt me, or like I'm hurting. It's like it can get so messy, which isn't like it's not the total bad thing because humans are messy. Like we're messy,
Absolutely.
we're messy, but it's just I think if we take those steps, I think a lot of repairing can happen or a lot of building can happen even in the midst of addiction. I think we don't really see it that way. But yeah.
I'll give like a fun example about this. So, I'm really big into community building. It's probably one of my favorite things to do. And so, I will do little workshops at my kids' school. And the other day, I was in there and I was making little squeeze sensory packets with them, teaching them different spots in their body that they can get empowered from, right? So, like how to use their voice and that kind of stuff.
That's so cool.
Fun stuff. And the one kid goes, "Hey, do you know how I can tell you're old?" And I go he goes, "You have gray hair like my mom." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. Thank you." So, I'm gonna use that as an example because I could take that mad personal, right? Like, I could be
Mhm.
like this little kid, right? But in that moment, I'm like, "Okay, I am victimized by this 8-year-old," right? Like, shots fired, right? Like, I am yeah, he roasted me pretty good on that one, right? And his mom. But that being said, okay, it is personal, but is this a personal offense towards me? He's making an observation about the world around him, right? And I think that there's moments in that where we can just go, okay, I'm offended, but I understand. And
Yeah.
I think
I
like
think
that comma, but I
yeah.
understand is so important.
I think we have a hard time holding both like both truths in one thing
Mhm.
as either like is either is either is either I'm offended or we're totally fine. Like I don't or I'm totally fine. I think um and I don't know if it's like has to do with anything like and it's like a cultural level if we're just more offended these days. I don't know. But like I think we take things like black and white. It's like it's either totally offended or you're totally like my bestie. Like we're like it's we can't hold the fact that someone that I'm really close with, whether it be like a family member or a partner or a friend, I love them or they love me, but they're also in a place where they're hurting me right now with their actions and they're not in the best state. I feel like we have a hard time holding like two truths. I don't know.
Oh, I feel like that's the struggle with everything, right? And it's the ability to understand and keep moving forward. Because one of the things, and as this relates really heavy to substance use, right? We can look at it and go, I understand that someone is struggling here, and I'm offended because they keep on missing out on different things with us, right?
Mhm.
So we can get stuck in the I can't believe they're a bad friend or I can't believe they're a bad partner or this stuff, right? And we can feel that way. But that comma, but I understand allows us to have some action where,
Yeah.
I'm not going to go back and like all of a sudden not allow the kid that said I had gray hair to participate. That would be crazy, right? I'm not going to do that. But I think an example that if we're using this like hey, I'm dating somebody and they are binge drinking on the weekend, which is not only bad for them, but they're also missing out on stuff with me and they're not going to the movies with me or whatever it is, right? I can be offended, but I understand that something more is going on. And in that understanding, I can have boundaries and conversations. Boundaries around,
I
hey,
like that saying, boundaries in conversation.
boundaries and conversations. Hey, listen, you need to participate in our relationship more, right? Like, I want to, when I think of being in a relationship, it's spending time together. And right now, we're not doing that because you seem to be maybe drinking more than normal or whatever, right? However you want to phrase that. And the boundary is when we hang out together, you have to set aside at least one day out of the week that you're not going to consume alcohol and spend time with me. And it's do you see how that's kind of setting a really strong boundary of like, I'm not going to participate in this with you. I wish that you would do more around it, maybe get more additional help. But we are absolutely allowed saying, hey, if you want to spend time with me, if you want to have access to me, you also have to be a safe person and you have to be a
Mhm.
healthier person. And
Yeah.
I don't think that's not asking too much of someone.
No, I think for for me, because a large part of my life struggle with a lot of especially like as a freshman, you're like new, you want to like please everyone. You're like, I just want to be friends with everyone, or I want to like do that. I struggle heavily with codependency, and that like drove me insane because I didn't like really know how to have boundaries and stuff. So like I became like so like heavily involved in like, the fact that someone else like, kind of like what you mentioned, that they are ghosting me to participate in activities that are, like, harmful to them, that will, like, affect me, like, so, like, heavily that I didn't know how to say, "Okay, I am going to step back from" and boundaries are, like, different for, like, everyone, but in certain cases, like, I'm just gonna step back from the situation, I'm gonna step back from this relationship, this friendship, or this family relationship because I don't feel like safe right now when you're like when you're like constantly using. How can we have like there's also those questions of how can we have a better relationship? Is it and that can like mean many different things.
Mhm,
But when it comes to substances, it's like I am not going to pick up the phone when you're intoxicated.
mhm.
And that's like a boundary. Like I'm not gonna do that.
And that's a
And
completely reasonable boundary.
yeah, it's like, well, how and people else can also think like boundaries are black and white. Like it's all I think it all depends on like what is the safety that you feel with a person. You know, if you don't feel safe, I don't feel safe when you're like calling me like intoxicated. I'm not gonna like don't expect me to answer. You know, that's reasonable. And I think having those conversations is important if you want to be in a position of helping someone because you can run yourself dry if you don't have those. And for me initially, it was kind of like new to me for a while, like, you know, setting the idea of setting boundaries, this idea of I have like my own garden and if I keep allowing this is like just a weird like analogy. If I don't actually no, this is not an actual analogy because you know in Penn Hills I have a garden. So like So I had like I used to have like a net fence around my garden,
Mhm.
but the deer would just still like eat through it and somehow tear up my plants. So okay, so then I talked with my family. I was like, okay, we got to move to like a more sturdier fence.
Mhm.
It might not be as like attractive, but we have to save like I my garden is like my everything. So, and that could be like an analogy for our own protecting our own selves when we're dealing with these situations. Like it's not saying like for me, like I felt like very guilty when I started like learning about boundaries and learning how to like set them because I felt like I always needed to be, like, there as, like, someone that's, like, very, like I'm very community oriented and very, like I like people, like, I'm an introvert, but I like my people,
Yeah.
but I didn't realize that, like, initially, especially when it comes to, like, aspects like addiction, is that you have to have those boundaries, or if you're not, then it's just the deer are gonna come and eat your 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 plants, so
And not in a mean way.
yeah, not yeah.
That's what deer do. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
I couldn't come up with a better analogy, but that's just
okay,
was
I love that. You actually have me thinking about something, and I wonder if this is a way to kind of capture this a bit.
Mhm,
When we think of boundaries, you know how we were talking earlier about the more that you get to know yourself, the more humanity that you have, and the more that you can offer to others. But there are times where we get into entanglements with people that
mhm.
maybe we need to pull back a little bit more because now we're starting to look at our humanity and be upset with ourselves about something, right? And I think what you're talking about is, hey, I give so much of myself that I am now lost without this other person, right? Or I feel very like strong emotions when this other person isn't around, right?
Yeah,
There can be a lot of, let's just say, like benefit to putting boundaries in place. It's like an owner's manual for yourself. Like, hey, how do I operate the best in relationships? And for some of us, especially people who are very, very deep people, right? That have like a lot of thoughts about things and a lot of just like, like the gears always be going, right? Those kind of things.
yeah.
I think that in those particular case, you think about all the side conversations you have, all the side quests that you go on, right?
The
There
side quest.
side quests that you go on, yeah. But no, there can be moments in all of that where we get lost in, "Oh, man, I did not have good boundaries because I was just vibing," right? I was just living in the moment. And it's really awkward sometimes to go back and put boundaries in place, but we need to think about it as protecting our own humanity a little bit. And it's like, "Oh, man, I'm leaking from like 7 different directions. Let me put some boundaries back up,
Yeah,
gain some insight on myself again, like how did I get this lost in the sauce, if this makes
yeah.
sense?"
Or what is my actual, like, place in this situation? I think that's a good question to ask, like, what needs to be my place? Because I think sometimes we can, like, get entangled in something and it's not really, like, our place to really be in a situation. I think especially those of us that struggle with, like, over responsibility, being, like, over responsible for, like, how making sure someone isn't using. I think those of us that struggle with that struggle with, okay, what is my actual place? My responsibility isn't to make sure you're not using, but I can be a safe person for
Mhm,
you. I can be a safe friend. And I think that being like no even like knowing how to be a safe friend, I think that's like a whole different conversation. But I think that's where it can help us to know like, okay, what is my actual like what is my actual thing to do here? Because I may be doing more things than I really need to do, or I'm taking on a role that's not like healthy for me or really healthy for the other person. Because I think sometimes when it comes to addiction, I think sometimes and then, like, I have, like, a lot of compassion for this. It's like if you sometimes have a tendency to be over responsible, then sometimes, like, that can, like, enable someone else, not, like, intentionally, but sometimes that, like, creates a dynamic where you're, like, trying to help them with the consequences or, like, protect them from it, and then they're not really, like, experiencing what they need to experience. It's very difficult for people that, like, are want to help people or, like, want
Mhm.
to, like, I guess for, like, therapists or, like it's difficult. It's something that, like, it's a more of, like, a learned or honed skill.
Actually, I think kind of right in line with that, when we think about what we've been going back and forth about, right? This idea of like, hey, how can you be a supportive friend? How can you help somebody through addiction? If you are struggling with addiction, how do you approach getting some help, right?
Mhm.
What does this all look like? Honestly, when it comes to addiction, you almost always want a professional involved of some sort,
Mhm.
right? And I'm not, I mean, obviously, I'm going to plug mental health professionals. And yes, go to your therapist, go to counselors, go to the counseling center, do all of those things, right? But if you find yourself like, hey, I can't start there. That makes me uncomfortable to think like, how do I go into an office and just say, here's what I'm going through? One, therapists are really easy to talk to. Okay. Genuinely, I think that there's nothing that you're going to say in a therapist's office that they haven't heard before because all they do is deal with humans.
Yeah.
One of the comforting things that I usually offer to people is now remember, I spent much of my early career in the criminal justice system.
I didn't mean to laugh like that, but it's
That's okay. Nothing you could
just like
say is going to shock me as a human. So I
like,
say that
I've seen some things.
I've been some places, yes. I have friends in all types of levels, right? But one of the things that I think through this conversation is you don't actually have to save your friend when they are
Mhm.
struggling with substances or mental health or academic problems, whatever it is. Being a good friend is not saving somebody from like their own choices. Sometimes it's offering them choices in a healthier way, right?
Mhm.
So if we're talking
Mhm.
about substances, going back to that idea of you are not the friend they drink with, right?
Mhm.
So I'm a millennial and we joke about this in class because I talk about cocaine all the time, right?
You do a lot.
Yeah.
You're known as a cocaine for
God, no, that's so bad. But one of the things that I think about with that is how widely that's used in not only when you're talking to folks in therapy, but also in other circles, right? It's something that, and I think it's the culture around cocaine being not as serious as other substances, right? But it is in fact highly addictive, right? Like there's some stuff in there that is
Mhm.
problematic, right?
Yeah.
Especially how it hits your dopamine receptors. But that being said, it could be as much as being understanding that people partake in that, but not participating it with them and encouraging them not to do it. Right. And you can be a good friend like that by saying, hey, what you're looking for from using this can be available in other ways, right? Like you can have fun without using substances. And I'm going to be the friend that shows you that you can do that.
I think a lot of people, especially men, I think what when this comes to addiction is the idea of presence. Being present with someone is I think just it means the world to people. If you're just with them, um, in their messiness, and also if you're also practicing vulnerability in a healthy way, just opening up about your things that you're going on for you, and they are able to open up. I think that is I've seen it do like it sounds like it sounds magical, but it sounds magical, but it can also be simple, but it can also be hard because it's just the simple I think we're uncomfortable. In my experience, men are can be uncomfortable just even, like, sitting presently with each other. It just feels like awkward, and I think it's an important skill to kind of learn, learn how to be present with someone and being, like, attentive. I think it's, super healing, and I think just offering, like, your vulnerability to a degree can also be, helpful because it goes also into, like, the humanity aspect of it as we're all human, and I don't know, I think those are things to not be afraid of, but to, like, lean into it with practice
Mhm.
because, yeah, like, as a man, it's, like, it's uncomfortable to be present with each other or to be vulnerable, but it's, like, actually very healing, and it's, like, it can be, like, another, like, protective factor against certain things, so I think it's something to be open to because you can it's also I think when people think of being present or being vulnerable, it's like, "I'm gonna tell you, like, my whole life story. I'm gonna trauma dump you on you." It's like, "No, it's not what that is." It's just being present in the messiness of, like, our humanity, our common humanity.
There is so much to talk about being a human. There is,
Yeah.
right? Like, if you think about it, one of the things that we probably do ourselves in a little bit is we talk about other people. And if you can move out of that and into having real life human to human conversations about just the human experience, right? So, for instance, both living in Pittsburgh, right?
Mhm.
There are human experiences that we can talk about all the time just living here. Like, for instance, there's shared experiences around driving on the parkway, right? We don't
Yeah.
talk about it a lot, but like, are people okay? I don't think we are, right? Like, I we are aggressive with each other, like that kind of stuff. There's humanity everywhere you look. I think about I was on the phone with my friend who lives in Baltimore, and I was talking about sitting in bathtub traffic, right?
Mhm.
And she's like, "What in the world is the bathtub?" I'm like, "Oh, that's where floods onto the Parkway, which is a major roadway in Pittsburgh." And she's like, "Have they not fixed that?" And I go, "Oh, sweetie, this is Pittsburgh. They'll do it. They'll get it. They'll get there."
I am terrified of driving on Route 28
Yeah.
'cause
Fair.
I don't know what it is. Like, even more than, like, 376. 376, I feel like it's fine. I think because, like, it's just so, like, small and, like, everyone is going so fast. So, like, I worked at a summer camp that was on the north side, so I had to take that way, and, like, oh my gosh, I was like, how are we tailgating, when it's in traffic? Like, what are we doing here? So, I think just yeah, just, like, those common experiences of daily daily things that go on. There's a lot of things that happen in Pittsburgh, so yeah.
I think we have opportunities to remind ourselves that we're just somebody's kid out here and we're all just trying to make it, right? I don't know how much I've talked about this, but I love riding public transportation and purely like I'm a bus girly. I love it. Give me a bus,
It's
let me stand
interesting.
at a bus stop for a period of time. I love it, right? Because it's a moment to really just be amongst other people who you do
Mhm.
not know, who you have literally no other contact with other than, hey, we're happen to be at a bus stop or we happen to be on a bus together. And I love that experience of being around other humans who are just being people, right?
Yeah,
There's moments in that where you remember, hey, regardless of anything I have going on, here is just, we're just all vibing in this space together.
yeah, yeah.
I think it's a cool existential thing, probably.
I think it's also, like, a healthy thing too is, when you're this happens to me, so I sometimes, like, I feel like I'm too friendly sometimes. Like, if I'm, like, just out, especially, like, because I like to go to Squirrel Hill. So if I'm, like, out and I just, like sometimes, like, I just, like, get into good conversations with people who like, ha I don't know. But I think it's a reflection that, like, everyone, like, feel like we make those things awkward, but it's actually, like, just it should be so normal.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
should be so normal just to have those conversations, those, like, 10-minute conversations with, you know, the guy you just met at the record store, you don't know. I think it's because it kind of, helps us to lock in. I'd never use that word, but lock into, like, the common human experience of we're just, and also you can, like, people, like sometimes I'll have people say things to me that I, like, really need to hear, and it's, like,
Mhm.
weird. It's like I was like, "I really need to hear that actually." It's like, "Wow." And I think if we can be, more open to that sometimes, even, like, for the introverts out there, if we're, like, can be open to that, I think that can don't downplay those connections. Don't downplay those experiences.
One of the kind of fun activities that I like to do or encourage people to do is the idea of you cannot back out of plans. And so if you make plans to go do something, you can't back out of it. And that teaches us the like frustration tolerance of going through something, right?
Mhm.
But if we take that idea and apply it to talking to people, it is really not that difficult to spark up a conversation with somebody. And to your point, it's not weird to talk to each other. We are the same thing, right?
Mhm.
We might be very different, but you and I are the same thing, right? And
Yeah.
I think one of the really cool parts about that is leaning into even if it's awkward, it's a little bit of a connection. And I think that that to the overarching thing, the idea of male loneliness, right? It's
That's
okay
a
to
huge
have communication with folks. Literally say anything. Like, "Do you have
yeah,
wheels on your what kind of wheels do
if
you?"
I feel like if we're if we're talking like when it comes to like addiction and self-sufficiency, that factor of male loneliness can play into the tendency to use substances because you feel like I need to be self-sufficient, but also I need to prioritize that over like other relationships. Yeah, that is a factor. That I think that's huge factors.
Yeah. Okay. So, a quick rundown of what we talked about today, because I feel like a bit of a journey, which is okay. I think we have a couple more podcasts that we need to do together.
Yeah.
Serious conversations. What else? Some mental health stuff. But I think one of the things that I wanted to make sure that really got mentioned and understood today is how much mental health plays a role in substance use.
Mhm.
And that it's a little bit of a cycle back and forth too, right? Obviously, as we dip more into addiction, sometimes we can have more mental health problems, and that it is not shameful to talk about all of this, and that there are people out here, whether they are your besties or a therapist, or whether there's another person that you can just connect to. Being willing to talk about this stuff is not awkward. It's not weird. It's the first step in having a healthier relationship with anything, is
Mhm.
acknowledging like, "Hey, do I have an okay relationship with this?" And I really hope that people, if they are listening or watching, whatever, they get the idea of, one, you can go on long side quests and get to a final answer. It is okay, right? Do the side quests. But more than anything else, understanding that this is all stuff that humans experience.
Yeah.
Everything from mental health to relationship problems to I don't like my body, right? Like all of those are human things. And the first step in having a healthier relationship with whatever it is acknowledging that maybe the relationship could be healthier. And we're even thinking about that with depression, right? That idea of like, could life be a little bit better than what it is right now? Okay, what steps
Yeah.
do I have to take to get there?
Yeah, I think that's very important because I think we might like have certain goals in mind. It was like, okay, I'm never ever going to be depressed. I'm never ever going to be like addicted. So I think sometimes it's just being like, okay, so when this happens, when I do fall into a pattern of addiction, what are some of the things that might be in place that I could like hold on to while it's happening so it doesn't propel itself further down.
And with that, if we're thinking about this on a really realistic level, we'll take depression, for instance. I would love to see people connect immediately to a therapist, maybe consider some
Mhm,
medication, that kind of stuff, because that's truly some of the best treatment for it, right?
mhm.
Is the combo of talk therapy and medication,
Oh,
right?
I think we did talk about it a little bit in class.
But one of the things that come into that is if you are noticing that you're not feeling really great, right? And you're falling behind on some of your self-care, getting structured with your meals could be helpful, right? Making sure you eat at
Mhm.
least breakfast and lunch out of the day, right? Or I would even go, hey, if you get out of bed and you're able to brush your teeth, that is taking a step in the right direction. And I think sometimes we think like, oh, I have to do the max level. I got to start at the gym immediately and that's going to help me feel better. And it's like, no, 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 flossing, right? Like wash your hair really, really good. Like whatever you need to do to get an inch healthier.
That's my first priority today. It may not be like I don't know, I may not be able to conquer the world today, but maybe I could do a few things.
Absolutely. Maybe I
Yeah.
could throw a load of laundry in so I'm not wearing clothes that I don't actually like, right?
Mhm.
Like there's little steps like that. And I only want to say that and kind of really nail that home is because one of the things that can be really defeating in all of this is thinking that, hey, even with substance use, right? Like I have to be sober right now. And that is the only way that I can
Yeah.
work having a healthier relationship. And it's like, hey, sometimes that's not actually possible in the healthiest way, right? If we think about
Yeah.
alcohol,
That's
oh, if you are drinking
yeah.
every day and then all of a sudden you decide, I'm not going to drink anymore, we probably need somebody to supervise you through that step down.
Yeah, or like a plan because I think, yeah, that like the idea of just like, okay, you just need to stop drinking, you just need to stop doing like substances is not realistic because it could actually, from what we've discussed before, it could actually be like harmful to the process.
Absolutely. So, all of that to be said is connection. I feel like that I love that that was our main topic today. Connection.
Because listen, I can talk about that for hours. If you've seen anything like on my podcast, it's a large amount is on friendship, so it's just a lot.
Well, and it's tangibly I used to joke about this, and so I might as well just continue on. I used to think, and maybe I still really do think the meaning in life is connection because it's the thing that's the most tangible. Humans are meant to connect with one another, and
Yeah,
it is really when we think about therapy, it's connecting to somebody on such a deep level that they understand you as a human and you're able to make change in that. You're able to feel like safe enough to make change. And we think
yeah.
about substance use, connecting people to other people, healthier resource, all of that stuff makes huge differences for folks. So yeah, connection for the win, right? We can I love that that is your main topic or like the energy that comes into this.
It's not like I don't even think it's partially intentional, but sometimes it just happens.
You
And
just
it's
go to it.
like I don't realize like how much I could talk about men's friendships, which I
Mhm.
think need to be talked about, but it's like goodness. But yeah, I think those are important protective factors. Those are important pieces. Do you have like any like final things to say to the listeners or things that you wanna or insights you wanna share to the world?
That's a really good question. So, one, you're a human and it's okay, right? I
Mm,
think that's a really big thing, and it's okay to be a human. And also, we are programmed to dehumanize in a lot of ways, right?
we are.
And that looks like othering people, right? Where we can say, like, well, at least I'm like this and they're like this, right? And I think that
Yes.
tendency is built into a lot of our media. It's like, you can't be skinny enough, you can't be rich enough, those kind of things that fall into it. That's all sorry, that is all dehumanizing programming, right? And there is a really good book well, there's many good books about this particular topic, but if anybody is interested in community building, that is really the foundation, which is processing your own tendency to dehumanize yourself and others and work on being like, okay, this is a human thing. What do I do now? Right? What is my action plan? And I think that might be my last little bit of like, hey, if you're serious about this, that's probably where you start out.
Yeah. So I think it's important just to it's funny because we talked at the beginning, we talked about self-awareness, so, like, I guess at the end of talking about self-awareness, I think that's,
Totally.
like I think it's so important to to start out with that, to start out with where are the judgments I have, like, against myself
Mhm.
and other people, where am I not being compassionate to myself, and other people, and a lot of that I feel like a lot of that, in my experience has to do with, like, how I was kind of raised to believe about addiction and just the topic itself, I think it's once you, like, step out of, like, that, like, if in college or, like, you're, becoming an adult, I think that it becomes, journey of exploring what are some of the things that I may have believed that aren't really true about addiction, then, that I need to, like, kind of reframe. I think that's
Absolutely. I guess maybe the last thought on this. One of my favorite assignments to read, but also give, and I think that people get a lot out of it, is an assignment that I give in multicultural counseling where we look at all of our identities and talk about how we gained that identity, right? So it could be
that's
like,
interesting.
hey, what socioeconomic class did you grow up in? What religion did you grow up in? What race did you grow up in? Right? Like all of those identities that come into play with how we understand ourselves and also how we interact with one another. And I build it off of intersectionality anyway, right? So it's like all of these intersections of an individual. And what's really cool about asking people like, "Hey, what are all these layers of you? Like how do you understand yourself? How did you come to this point?" Is people don't get those questions, right? So it's like we
Yeah.
don't ask somebody, "Hey, what was it like growing up as a man?" Right? Like that feels like
Yeah, that's not like a
say out loud, but I think it's important to ask, like, "Hey, in your world, what was it like growing up with insert anything?" something that I usually use as an example is, okay, I can identify what it's like growing up in Appalachia. I can identify what it's like growing up with like divorced poor parents. And it's like, okay, that shaped my identity a lot. Like I know what it means to get food from a food bank. Like I understand
Mhm.
that like identity piece, right? Or that experience, that lived experience. And I also understand the shame that goes into that. So
Yeah,
there's so much you can learn about yourself. And then with that, you apply it to what you understand about other people, your empathy of other people.
yeah, I think that that grows empathy, if anything. I think it grows
Mhm. All right. This was lovely.
Well,
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah,
thank you for being on the podcast. I'm excited to have more conversations. We have like so much to talk about in the realm of mental health. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, and I'll come back anytime, and we'll do maybe a 3-hour one next time.